morning and welcome to the Ventura Center for Spiritual Living. I'm Reverend Bonnie Rose. It's great to see you here this morning. Let us start our celebration service by standing up together and singing our congregational song. And so let us continue to breathe deeply into that beautiful spaciousness that Bill brought us to through the power of his words, the words of Spirit speaking through him. Let us relax, let go, let God, and allow ourselves to be uplifted by the words of our sacred reading.
I Keep the Promise by Ernest Holmes. I shall keep the promise that I have made to myself. I shall never again tell myself that I am poor, sick, weak, or unhappy. I shall not lie to myself anymore, but shall daily speak the truth to my inner soul, telling it that it is wonderful and marvelous, that it is one with the great cause of all life, truth, power, and action. I shall whisper these things into my soul until it breaks forth into songs of joy with the realization of its limitless possibilities. I shall assure my soul.
So feasting on the words of Dr. Holmes, let us feel that energy of that limitless nature that we truly are, that soul source that abides in us and breathes through us and sings through us. And let us become so filled with this presence that it causes us to sing. That we sing this song, I am remembering who I am, knowing that I am is the voice and the word of God, the true self, the name of the true self. We sing it not only for ourselves, but we sing it for all beings everywhere. I am remembering who I am. I am remembering. Resting in this sublime remembrance. We breathe in deeply and then exhale, opening our eyes in love with what is, as it is, and so it is.
Sometimes I'm troubled, but I'm not in despair. Struggling, I make my way through. My trials, they come only to make me strong. I must endure, I must hold on, yet still I rise, never to give up, no, never to give in against all odds, yet still I rise high above the clouds. At times I feel alone, yet still I rise above all my problems, above all my eyes can see. Knowing God is able to strengthen me, yes, God strengthens me, yet still I rise, never to give up, no, I can't give in against all odds, yet still I rise high above the cloud. At times I feel alone, but God allows me to keep on rising. Lord, I need to know which way shall I go, yet still I'm alone.
So how do you like the new sound system so far? I think also it may have a little something to do with the singer and the band. You know, they're quite good too. And man, I was gonna get up here and tell you why Mark felt the need to talk about my underpants, but seems a little anticlimactic after that. But just so you know, I'm really careful about that. And ladies, you know this. I asked backstage if any of the men had to have this issue. You know, do any of you guys ever wear polka dot underpants when you're wearing white pants? You're not supposed to do that. And you know, they said no one will know you're wearing this tunic. And what do? I walk out there, and I'm wearing a new mic pack and a new mic, and I turn and I face there, and I lift up my pants to adjust the thing because it's on a different side. So there you go. There you go. I felt the need, I had to tell everybody backstage about the polka dot underpants, so now all of you guys know too. However, that is not what we're here to discuss today. So the name of my message this morning is called Exciting Impossibilities. And if you saw that title, you might think, was that a typo? Didn't she mean exciting possibilities? Because in Science of Mind churches, we're always talking about infinite possibilities, you know, that in God, everything is possible. And Norman Vincent Peale, who was not a Science of Mind minister, but he was a friend of Dr. Ernest Holmes, who was our founder, he talked about positive thinking and later morphed that into possibility thinking. Many of us also quote Emily Dickinson, who said, "I dwell in possibilities," which is a beautiful space to be. And the space of possibility is great. It's a wonderful place to be. So why am I talking about impossibility today? Like it's a good thing. Well, we talk a lot about dwelling in infinite possibilities, and sometimes we get stuck in our limited vision. We forget that possibilities exist. Has that ever happened to anybody? You know? Or we say, you know, I tried that possibility business like once, and and it didn't work. It just didn't work for me. So this message is for anybody who feels like they're stuck either in one or more areas of your life, where it feels like that possibilities are not moving forward. And maybe we can turn that around by talking about impossibilities, because there are some really powerful spiritual impossibilities to consider. And I'm going to fast forward because I've already said this word to Cheryl Ostrander, who is our scriptwriter for Christmas. Where is she? Yeah, Cheryl contacted me in June and said, we have to start thinking about the Christmas script. And so I'm going to talk just a minute about possibility in the Christmas story. Many of you know the story of the Virgin Mary. I'm going to call her the BVM, all right, the Blessed Virgin Mary. I think that's what they call her in Catholic churches sometimes, the BVM, right? Am I correct on that? Yes, the BVM, okay. So the BVM is sitting around minding her own business, and the angel Gabriel comes to her and he says, guess what, BVM? You are going to get impregnated by the Holy Spirit. And she said, well, he doesn't actually say that first. He says, you're going to give birth to the Son of God. And the BVM says, what are you smoking? I mean, something like that. Or maybe she says, how can that be, for no man has known me? I think that's the actual thing that she says. Yeah, right. So he says, well, the Holy Spirit will come to you and you will be with child. And first, she asks that question, how can this be? But then she says, all right, let it be with me according to thy will, meaning God's will. And she says, for nothing is impossible for God. Nothing is impossible for God. Now, I don't want to contradict the BVM or argue with her, but there is something that is impossible for God. Blasphemy. I'm going to be stripped of my title. It's going to be like that old Branded TV show, where, remember that show? Branded, scorned with the one who ran. Strip me of my title, you're going to break my new microphone over your knee, and everybody turns their backs as I walk up. No, I digress. The thing that is impossible, the thing that is impossible for God is that God cannot act against its own nature. God cannot act against its own nature. So therefore, certain things are impossible for God. God is infinite. So therefore, God cannot be finite. I have a list here so I don't forget. I'm going to read some of them to you. God is omnipresent. So that means that God cannot be absent anywhere. It is impossible for God to be absent because God is omnipresent. God is wholeness, so it is impossible for God to be broken. God is abundance, so it is impossible for God to be lack. God is creative, so that means that it is impossible for God to be out of creative solutions or ideas. There is always a new idea in God. God never makes a mistake. It is impossible for God to make a mistake. God is love, so therefore it is impossible for God to be something other than love. And God is life, so it is impossible for God to be death. That's kind of a different way of thinking about impossibilities, isn't it? And I'm hoping that it's helpful to you, because the reason that I think it will be helpful to us is that in this teaching, we teach that we are one with God. That, again, because God is omnipresence, it means that there is not a spot where God is not. It means that God must be everywhere. So God is the indwelling presence in each and every one of us as well. So if these things are true for God, these things are true for us as well. That it is impossible for us to be finite. It is impossible for us to be absent. It is impossible for us to be in lack. It is impossible for us to be broken. It is impossible to be out of ideas. It is impossible for us to be unloved or unloving. It is impossible for us to die. It certainly may feel like it is possible for those things sometimes, but I'll get to that in just a minute. First, I want to read a quote by Ernest Holmes that supports this, what I'm saying. And Ernest Holmes wrote, "God is always God. No matter what our emotional storm or what our objective situation may be, there is always a something hidden in the inner being that has never been violated. We may stumble, but always there is that eternal voice, forever whispering within our ear, that thing which causes the eternal quest, that thing which forever sings and sings." Dr. Ernest Holmes. And so he kind of explains in that quote is that why sometimes we do go through these things, why we sometimes have an experience of lack, or we have an experience of feeling broken, or we have an experience of mistake. Even if we have those experiences, though, in the bigger picture, in the absolute reality, but when I say God, I mean the absolute reality, which is the wholeness that contains everything. Even if we are having one of those experiences of lack, of illness, of death, of anything like that, yes, we are having that experience, and that is real, but it is not the only truth. Right? It is not the only reality. That reality is contained within a much bigger reality that supersedes the reality of the smallness of those things that I've just described. Does that make sense to you? Good. I hope so. It's a little hard to explain because it's hard for our human minds to get around it, but it's true. It's true. We really feel it. You know, the way that I often express and explain absolute reality is talking about standing on a mountain, right? You're standing on a mountain, and this happens in Ojai a lot when I stand on the mountains in Ojai, and you look down and Ventura is blanketed in fog, but you're standing in the hot sun, and so you ask yourself, is it a sunny day or is it a cloudy day? And it depends on where you're standing, right? The answer is yes. Ernest Holmes says we do not change God, we do not change the law, we change our position in it. And some people will say, oh, you must identify with the sunny day, don't identify with the clouds. And I would rather say, no, you identify with the source of all of those things. You identify with the source of the clouds and the rain and the sky and the sun, because all of those things are part of God. Even the things that we say, you know, that are impossible for God to be finite or limited or lack, those are experiences of God in that they are portals to something greater, right? And they provide contrast. I think the next logical question, though, you know, since we have this capacity to be infinite and to be abundant and to be omnipresent and to have an unlimited number of creative ideas and solutions and to know that we are always loved and lovable and loving, why don't we act like it sometimes? Sometimes, occasionally. Why do we not call forth that reality constantly? Well, that's another impossibility. Because God made us in its image and likeness, then God had to give us free will. And if you have free will, there has to be something to choose from. There has to be the darkness and the light. There has to be the choice of being joyful or being sorrow. Ernest Holmes wrote in this thing called You, he said, you cannot have a mechanical spontaneity. And most of us want to be spontaneous and want to be free, but if it was all good and only good, and if there was no choice between something else, then that wouldn't really be freedom. We would be like robots, automated, right? So free will is a gift, and sometimes we use it to our advantage, and sometimes we use it to our disadvantage, to ways that feel destructive or perhaps not as uplifting and life-affirming or as productive as we would like them to be. I was reading a book by Alan Cohen the other day, and he was saying that it's as if we've been given all of the resources that we need to create a wonderful movie. We have all of the writers, we have all of the set pieces, we have all of the actors, and at any given moment, we get to choose whether we create Miracle on 34th Street or Nightmare on Elm Street. I've never actually seen Nightmare on Elm Street. Is it bad? Really bad stuff happens? No, Chris is in favor of it. Well, yeah. Friend Chris on Facebook, and you'll see what kind of stuff that he's into. Yeah. All right. Yeah. So, you know, one of the ways that we choose our reality, that we choose Nightmare on Elm Street versus Miracle on 34th Street, is through what we choose to focus on. In the same book, Alan Cohen wrote about a woman that he met on the street. She was coming this way, and he was going that way, and he's getting closer and closer to her, and she's of a certain age. I won't say the age because I'm getting pretty close to it at this point. But he's walking towards her, and she's wearing a white sweatshirt, and on the sweatshirt, he sees in big red letters, it says pornography. It's like, what, Grandma? What? Speaking of Facebook, have you ever done those Facebook tests where they say, you know, Pick the color of your underwear, the underwear theme again. Pick the color of your underwear and the last thing you ate, and that's your porn star name. Today, mine is polka dot Metamucil. Pretty sexy, right? Right? It's like boom, chicka, bow, bow. Here we go. Right? But once again, I digress. It seems to be that kind of a morning. You know, I like this new sound system. Just frees me up. I love it. So he got closer to the woman of a certain age wearing a sign that said pornography on her shirt, and then in little fine print, it said underneath in black letters, "is against God's will." The shirt said, "Pornography is against God's will," right? And the metaphor there for us, I think, is that we are doing that so much of the time, not say with pornography, but with the messages that we send ourselves. We say, oh, I have no ideas, no creative ideas left. There's no solution. There's absolutely no solution. That's in the big red letters on our sweatshirt. We're shouting that. I have no solution, no creative ideas. Everybody else took all the other creative ideas, right? That's on the top of our sweatshirt in the big red letters, and then in the fine print it says, "But you are one with God, and it is impossible for God to run out of creative ideas." Let me try that again. You are one with God, and it is impossible for God to run out of creative ideas, right? We may say, "Oh, I'm in terrible lack. I'm in awful lack. I can't pay my bills." That's in the big letters, the big red letters, and then the fine print once again says, "Wait a minute. You are one with God. God cannot be lack. It is impossible for God to be lack." So whatever is going on for you right now, see if you can make that into a sweatshirt in your mind, if you want, or literally if you choose to do that. Think about what it is you're screaming in the big red letters and the fine print that says, "Wait a minute, that's impossible for God, and I am one with God." That might really free up, That is a really creative use of the word impossible. Knowing your oneness with God and knowing that certain things are impossible for God. And just as you are in any moment, you are divinely in touch with that energy. You don't have to take a seminar. You don't have to change your hairdo. You don't have to lose weight. Right now, you can get in touch with that divine energy that has certain impossibilities attached to it, that divine energy that cannot go against its own nature. You can get in touch with the divine energy of infinite abundance. You can get in touch with the divine energy that never dies. You can get in touch with the energy that is omnipresence. You can get in touch with the energy that is all of those things and so much more, because it is who you are. And that's why we're here, is to celebrate that energy and to get in touch with it and to play with it and enjoy it. Now, one word of caution. Sometimes what happens in Science of Mind churches when we say that you're all these great things, right? And that we're supposed to focus on the big red letters on the shirt, the good ones, and then read the fine print, which is the stuff that we just say to ourselves occasionally in secret, right? We focus on the good, we focus on the positive, we focus on the possible. And that causes us sometimes to go into denial of the darkness and denial of the negative. Do you know what happens when you pretend that the negative isn't there? Is that you give it a lot more power, okay? What you do not transform, you transmit, right? If you give it, if you choose to ignore it, it says to that darker place of yourself, "Wow, I have so much power that she's afraid to even look at me." So what we do is we bring it up into the light, knowing that in and of itself it has no power. It just has the amount of power that we choose to give it, right? And bringing it up into the light, bringing it up to see it, is part of the way that we start to dismantle the power that we are giving it. That's one of the reasons I chose this book for this month. It's by Kyle Cease. Many of you have gone to see Kyle Cease at his seminar that he does at the Alex Theater on weekends. And the name of his book is, it's very Kyle Cease. He's a comedian. He's a bit raunchy. And his book is called "I Hope I Screw This Up." How falling in love with your fears can change the world, right? I just started reading this, and in the beginning part of the book, he talks about how it's impossible for him to write a book. He says he doesn't know how to write a book. He's never written a book before. All the good books have been written. And, and he writes, I'll read you a quote so you can get a sense of what the book is like. He says, "Right now I'm in a battle with my mind, which is trying to do everything it can to stop me from writing so it can escape the pain I feel in my chest as I type. My mind is trying to tell me that I don't know how to do this. It's telling me that this book is going to suck. It's telling me I'm going to miss my deadline, and it's reminding me of a Facebook comment where someone said my vocabulary was atrocious. And once I understood what that meant, I was really hurt." This part is really important. The thought that I have to write this book with the English skills of a 12-year-old has been standing between me and my happiness for the last 6 months. How often do we torture ourselves with what the people say about us on Facebook or in person or behind our backs, or the things that we think about ourselves, or trying to make our book like everybody else's when really it's supposed to be unique and new. And by your book, I mean your life, right? Your relationship, whatever it is you're doing. Now, through this chapter that I'm reading, Kyle Cease evolved a little bit, and you know how he evolved was that he did not ignore these negative voices. He just looked at them and didn't give them any power. He just looked at them and allowed them to actually emerge and be part of the page, to be an example to others, to allow us to get that stuff out so that we can see it, because once you see it, you can heal it. You can be with it in a new way. You know, people in class often ask me, when is my inner critic going to shut up? And I say, it probably won't shut up, but you'll have a very different relationship with it. You won't give it so much power. So Kyle is writing his book, and he said an hour later he felt like this. He said, "What I feel happening now is that my mind is starting to get evidence that it's not going to die from doing something that it hasn't done before. It's starting to get on the same page as the creative part of me. Now I'm feeling 62% excited, 35% scared, and 3% horny." What can I say? He's a guy, what can I say? Okay. "I can feel my mind pulling on all the reasons why this is going to be fun and easy, instead of giving me evidence of why I'm a terrible person with an elementary school child's vocabulary." So you see, it gets better. As we stop, we pull up the voice, we listen to it, bless you. We pull up the voice, we listen to it, we see it, we hear it, and then we move anyway. You know, I really am adamant about this because I don't want people to get into trouble. You know, in this church, in this center, we're always saying, feel your feelings, show your imperfections, you know, say what you're really thinking, and use some discretion about it as well, right? Use some discretion about it. You don't have to act out on every negative feeling you have. Oh, I'm feeling like slapping someone today. Well, let me just, you know, I'm going to slap a practitioner, that'll fix him. Yeah, that's right. So that's really, really, really important to understand that these things come up for our examination, not necessarily for our action, okay? So as he progresses through this book, Kyle Cease starts to get feeling better and better, and by the end of the first chapter, he has this conclusion that he says, and he writes, "We're all just heart and lungs and infinite potential. The only thing that separates you from any human being is your belief in your past story. When we stop using our limiting stories as barriers to the outside world and other people, we start to discover an entirely new type of collaboration with life that is effortless, inspired, and open-ended. And you know why that's so? Because we are one with God, and it is impossible for God to be anything other than effortless, inspired, and open-ended." One more application of this. And this is for anybody that grew up in a religion where you had very, very different messages about God. Sometimes in classes I like to go around and hear what people learned about God. And you know, people will say, oh, God hates me, God thinks I'm a sinner, God's going to smite me, God is judgmental, God is angry, God thinks I'm a mistake. In my house, it wasn't so much that stuff, it was more like God is going to be disappointed with me if I, you know, kiss my boyfriend in high school. Ooh. God would not want that. I'm not sure why he invented kissing if that's the case, but, you know, anyway. What if you could just spend some time, if that's you, just saying, it is impossible for God to be judgmental, for God is love. It is impossible for God to be disappointed in you because God is enough and therefore you are enough. It is impossible to think that God has made a mistake because God never makes mistakes. It is impossible for God to make a mistake. It is impossible for God to be angry. It is impossible for God to think that you're a sinner because you're part of the wonderful, wonderful mystery of grace and love that is unfolding here, that everything is conspiring for the greater good. And so that's what I encourage for all of you today, to use your impossibles really wisely, to use them with intelligence, and most of all, to use them with love. Because really, there is a vast expansiveness, an infinite pouring out of love that is available for you right now. And once you receive that, as you start to receive that, you see that there's even more. And once you see that there's even more, you know that you have enough to share. And that is the energy that blesses and transforms the entire world. So let's do that together now. Let us pray. And so I turn within and simply trust and know that there truly is this one powerful life, that God is always being God, that Spirit is always being Spirit, that love is always love. And that this energy, this absolute reality, defies description. But as I open my heart and allow my mind to drop into my heart, I expand in a feeling, a knowing, a belief that is beyond words. And this is who I am. This is who we are. We are that which cannot be described. We are that infinity. We are that grace. We are that love. We are that goodness. We are the allness of Spirit expressing in form. Spirit masquerading in form. That is who we are. And so how wonderful it is to know this and to know that we can look upon any of the limiting stories that we've been telling ourselves, any of the impossibles that we've been saying to ourselves, and we can transfer that impossibility into the nature of God, to know truthfully and deeply and powerfully that it is impossible for God to be anything other than God. So therefore, it is impossible for God to be finite. It is impossible for God to not have a solution. It is impossible for God to be out of ideas. It is impossible for God to be lack. And so we just know these truths for ourselves, and we allow this wellspring of goodness and love to fill us from the inside out, from the bottom up and from the top down. We feel this beauty, we feel this love, we feel this grace, and we use it to live our lives from that place of depth and understanding and goodness and grace. And so I am grateful, so grateful for this teaching and so grateful for this truth, so grateful for the transformation that I know has occurred here this morning because of our spiritual work together, that as we come together, we create this spiritual vortex of support and love that lifts the community up and that subsequently lifts the world up. I'm just so grateful to get to participate in something like that and to participate in it with all of you beautiful, blessed beings. I am grateful for this teaching and all that it has to offer. So grateful for this center as I bless all paths to God, churches, synagogues, temples, mosques, ashrams. I bless fundamentalists and atheists. I bless all beings because all beings are truly a blessing in their own unique and sometimes surprising ways. And so with a heart that is so filled with gratitude and so filled with love and grace and graciousness, I say thank you, Spirit, thank you, God, and I release these words into the divine mystery, and together we say, and so it is. I am so glad.
Wake up everybody, no more sleeping in bed. No more backwards thinking, time for thinking ahead. The world has changed so very much from what it used to be. There is so much hatred, war and poverty. Wake up all the teachers, time to teach a new way. Maybe then they'll listen to what you have to say. 'Cause they're the ones who's coming up, and the world is in their hands. When you teach the children, teach them the very best you can. Oh, the world won't get no better if we just let it be. No, the world won't get no better. We gotta change it, yes, you and me. Wake up all the doctors, make all the people well, all the ones who suffer and who catch all the hell. 'Cause they don't have so very long before their judgment day. So won't you make them happy before they pass away? Oh, wake up all the builders, time to build a new land. I know we can do it if we all lend a hand. The only thing we've got to do is put it in our minds. Surely things will work out, they do every time. Oh, the world won't get no better, no, if we just let it be. No, the world won't get no better. We gotta change it, yes, you and me. Come on. I need a little help, I can't do it alone. We need a little help, y'all. Come on, come on. Wake up everybody, no more sleeping in bed. Wake up everybody, yeah, come on. Oh, the world won't get no better if we just let it be. No, no, the world won't get no better. We gotta change it, yes, you and me. We gotta change it, yes, takes you and me. We gotta change it, yeah, 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 takes you